Well, I'm joined now by a panel of political pundits to tell us what they make of the day's events. With me is political editor political commentator Joanne Nadler, former Labour Party advisor Ayesha Hazarika, and anti-Brexit campaigner Femi Oluwole. Good evening to you all.
Hi.
Ayesha, Boris Johnson finally did it. He tried 3 years ago, didn't quite make it to number 10, but tomorrow heading to number 10. How do you feel about that?
I feel quite depressed, to be absolutely honest. I mean, I've predicted this day for a long, long time. Certainly when I was out door knocking, people, sort of Labour, Tory marginals were saying, yeah, I really want Boris Johnson to be the next Prime Minister or the next kind of Conservative leader. But even when it's happened, it's still been quite a shock at the same time, even though I've sort of predicted it and seen that it's coming. I just feel the reason why I think myself and so many people are dismayed and the hashtag #NotMyPM is trending is that he's been voted by a tiny sliver of the population, yet he is seeking to do something quite drastic, which is take this country out with a no-deal Brexit, which is not something that he has a parliamentary majority for, and it's not something that people signed up to even in the 2016 referendum. And I think as well he's going to be quite divisive. You've already seen President Trump, kind of boasting and glowing that people see him as a sort of Donald Trump-like figure. And I just feel that politics is going to get ever more divisive. As a Muslim woman, I was quite concerned about the comments he made about Muslim women. I just feel that we're very polarised on Brexit, and I feel that we're also entering into culture wars in this country. So I just feel like quite dismayed about how divisive I think he's going to be as a Prime Minister.
Joanne, what's your thoughts?
Well, I think actually he's going to tack towards the position that he took as London Mayor, where he couldn't really have been described as being characterised in the way that a lot of people do as a sort of sub-Trump. I mean, I agree with you, it's not a great endorsement to have President Trump's. But on the other hand, we do want to have a positive relationship with the US. So that's quite a tricky thing for him to have to balance, to get that tone right, I think. But listen, I mean, I was, as a Conservative supporter, I've always had my sort of doubts about Boris Johnson to a certain extent. He's not quite the sort of personality that I had anticipated should become Prime Minister. I thought he'd met the sort of peak Boris was as London Mayor. That seemed to be the ideal role for him, really. And I didn't anticipate, as you quite obviously cleverly have done, that he would be Prime Minister. I think it was only when Theresa May was unable to deliver Brexit and we saw the rise of the Brexit Party in the last few months has the possibility of him becoming Prime Minister really become viable.
Well, let's look at the promises he made today. Femi, he decided to put it in an acronym, DUDE, and the first promise was deliver Brexit. That must be your worst nightmare. He has promised to do the very thing that you don't want to happen.
So it's not just that he promises to deliver Brexit. Let's be really clear. There is a massive difference between leaving the EU with a deal and leaving the EU without a deal. And in 2016, when at the last time he was at the centre of a national vote, he said, vote the way I want you to vote and you'll get a great Brexit deal. This time, just over the last few weeks, he's literally said the opposite. He said to a very small fraction of the population, vote the way I want you to vote and you'll have no deal at all. And he won both times. That is ridiculous. Not to mention it flies in the face of our democracy, because in 2017, 54% of people voted for parties whose manifestos explicitly ruled out no deal. Now, voting for Brexit is one thing. We voted against no deal in 2017. That was what the majority voted for. So for a Prime Minister that wasn't even contemplated at the last general election to pull us out of the EU without a deal against the wishes of the majority of voters would be laughably undemocratic.
And he also says he's going to unite the nation, Joanne, and Ayesha was commenting on the comments he made on Muslim women and burqas, looking like letterboxes and looking like bank robbers.
I think that
referred to black people as pickaninnies, although he apologised for that. But
you have to see those comments within the wider context of those whole articles. Now, I do think that the problem, in a sense, with Boris Johnson is that because he is a provocateur, he's often his own worst enemy. And so, the line out of that article, which was actually saying, unlike France, I do believe in a liberal line, and if people want to dress in whatever they want to dress in, then they should be allowed to.
But your words have consequences, and charities have said that actually attacks on Muslim women went up after those comments. And I think
we don't know whether that was a direct result.
Well, Tell Mama have said that, and actually, I think your as political leaders, you give cues to the society you seek to serve about what you think is acceptable and what isn't. I mean, we all, are unified in our dismay about about Donald Trump, yet we seem to have a kind of pound shop Donald Trump about to be taking over. The other thing that's important, you mentioned about the nations. I'm from Scotland. You know, Scotland very much didn't vote for Brexit. And I think the other thing we have to look at is what these other nations are going to be doing. I think the United Kingdom is kind of hanging by a thread at the moment. And if Boris Johnson, he's boxed himself in as well with this do or die. And if we crash out with no deal, the chances of the union beginning to dissolve have really gone up.
OK, Femi, in terms of his views and his stance on Brexit, do we even really know if he is a hardcore Brexiteer? You know, Michael Gove abandoned him 3 years ago, not believing he's a true Brexiteer. He's spoken about toying with being in a single market.
Yeah. So this is the thing with Boris Johnson. He's not in it because he's an ideologue. He's not like Jacob Rees-Mogg. He's not like Nigel Farage. He's in it as a political opportunist. In 2015, he said, and I quote, "I'd vote to stay in the single market. I'm in favour of the single market. I want us to be able to trade freely with our European friends and partners." That is a man who knows that leaving the single market hurts this country, yet he chose to push for that just purely because he saw it as a chance to ride a wave of nationalism into number 10. And again, it worked. How are we allowing this?
I think there's a huge difference between patriotism and nationalism, if I could say.
Really quickly, Jo.
And, you know, I think what you'll find is he will actually be able to get a deal by using this threat of no deal.
OK, Joanne Nadler and Femi Oluwole and Ayesha Hazarika, really good talking to you. We've got a special tomorrow as Boris Johnson heads to number 10 right here on Channel 5 News at 6:30.